2. Welcome back from the summer, everyone. It's good to see everybody. And let's start with community comments. Hearing none. Let's move on to welcoming our new assistant principal. And I apologize if I don't get your last name correct.
Okay.
Allison Goingsrud.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Very well done. Yes, welcome. I haven't met you, Kate Potter. Great to meet you. And I look forward to getting to know you. Did I take your?
No, not at all. I included some background information, but we were delighted, as you probably heard through the grapevine, we had 42 applicants for the position of assistant principal, and we invited about 10 for an interview. And our goal was to narrow down to a couple finalists that we wanted to vet further through visitation and further probing and interviewing. And one clear candidate rose to the top. We only named one finalist to move forward and meet the superintendent, and that was Allison. Her formal education, if you will, is from Washington State University of Washington, where she grew up. I'm not sure of her sports affiliations, but she grew up in the Seattle area. And Allison moved here about 4 years ago with her husband, who is at MIT in a doc program. And I'm talking more about your husband than you, I'm sorry. That's what brought them to the East Coast. Allison continued her teaching career in the Lexington Public Schools, and the amount of teacher leadership roles that she assumed in support of her principal team was super impressive. You did a 1.5-year long internship with your administration and finished up the coursework that she needed for credentialing. Also impressive, Allison's taken several courses through EdGo, which is the organization that we are now partnering with that brings cultural and identity responsiveness professional development to school systems. Allison is super well versed in Lucy Calkins' Readers and Writers Workshop model, is very organized and tech savvy, which I personally am looking forward to how that collaboration will ensue. I know she's going to bring new pizzazz to tweeting and newsletters, and perhaps the paragraph format that I'm so accustomed to will be modernized. We're really excited. Allison has been a valuable contributor to colleagues who she has had informal coaching and peer modeling roles with. And as her principal said when we reference checked, she is poised and at the ready for this administrative position. So without further ado, our school committee,
hello,
all of whom have fabulous children at Pine Hill School that you'll get to know.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm just really excited to be here and get to know all of you, and thank you for having me. I'm very excited.
And you forgot to mention that the especially sweet component was that Lexington took our assistant principal, Jackie Daly. So, take it.
A little swap.
The especially sweet component that you don't even know about yet is that she happens to be well versed in baking.
Excellent. That's an added bonus. So yes, I would say the same thing that Barbara said. Allison really, she gets it. She has the National Board certification, which for those who are not in the field, that's a big deal.
It's a big deal.
That is a really highly regarded credential, and it just means that we're talking about somebody who is really well versed in current events in education, and we just think she's going to be awesome member of this team. So happy to have you.
Thank you.
Allison will stay for a bit, but we're encouraging her to sneak out at some point. Tomorrow's her last day with her first graders in Lexington, and it's going to be a big day for her. So we want her to
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to reports.
Well, in my principal's report to the superintendent, I shared that we had a remarkable opening of school. Teachers were poised and at the ready. Our students transitioned. Part of me was worried that the heat had them in a compliant stupor, and I don't mean that to be funny. The kids just, usually there's some transition challenges for some students at the beginning of the year. Everyone, it was like no time had been lost between June and late August, and our new students made a very smooth transition. This year, we put our kindergartners and our preschoolers on the same transition schedule as one another, and correlated with our sister school in Dover. So our grades 1 through 12 students, as you know, start the Wednesday before Labor Day, and all of our K and pre-K students started the following day. We no longer waited until after the long weekend. So a wonderful opening of school. I am picturing that you're probably going to talk specifically about facility improvements. So I won't go into detail there except to offer a shout out of praise and admiration to our custodial crew who attended to details in thorough and productive ways this summer. Our school, we kept thinking we were way ahead of schedule, and then one of the big projects would come in and then would be rushing, and they really outdid themselves to get the moves, the cleaning, and all of the big projects accommodated for. I mentioned that with our technology replacement cycle, we made lots of tech upgrades in devices. In addition, we introduced Chromebooks to third grade where they hadn't been previously. We had an iPad model in our younger grades, and then we moved to a Chromebook device model in 4th and 5th grade with state assessment and more importantly with more inquiry-based and research-based learning. We wanted the Chromebooks in 3rd grade, so that was a nice addition this year. As you know, school safety enhancements are being made, are always being revisited and improved upon, and with the audit, the safety audit that was done last spring across our Dover Sherborn school systems, Pine Hill has some very specific things that we can and are improving upon. If everything goes according to schedule, we'll have a fob swipe system installed later this week so faculty can access the building at any time. The building will be more secure from evening through the next school day. As was not the case previous to that system. Last spring, when we talked about the safety audit, some of you had asked about how we would be letting parents know about some of the culture shifts we would be making. So I included a blurb. I know you all get the news blast as Pine Hill parents, but I wanted you to see the language that we have and will continue to use with Pine Hill parents. No pushback regarding any inconvenience about walking around and entering the front of the building. I was most wondering about preschool. We used to have a very cozy drop-off system where parents literally drop their kids at the classroom door, and knowing that that would be a big culture shift to have drop-off be at the main door of the school has been a fine transition. Our preschool staff all front load in the cafeteria, and parents drop off at the side door there, and it has worked better than expected. I wanted to introduce new faculty and staff. In addition to Allison, we added a new preschool teacher this year in the familiar Lee Jeffries, who's been an ed assistant with us for almost a decade here. We increased our Spanish teacher time, so no new staffing there. And I named the 7 new educational assistants, although one of them is a familiar name to you all, in Janae Aguilar, who was excited to use her educational background in a different way, working in preschool. So all of our new staff are educational assistants, either through general education or special education. And Pine Hill happenings are listed there. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Thank you to parent volunteers who helped us with school photo day today. I love school photo day. The kids come in, we look like a prep school. The kids come in with little bow ties and extra, extra schmancy. And one of our first graders was wearing bigger than a kitty cat heel, not quite a stiletto, in her dress fashion, and she made it through the day, so go figure. So I'm happy to answer any questions, but I do want to remain short and sweet.
Anybody have any questions?
Hello. So I would just like to say that it's exciting to see the strategic plan that our team worked on so deeply last year kind of come to life. We left you in the spring with a framework of the goals that we are going to be tackling, and then Dr. Keogh brought the leadership team together over the summer for 2 days of retreat, which we did a lot of work around our goals for the year: social emotional learning, cultural responsiveness, and security, including the mental health component. And so we did a lot of work as a team, which then rolled us into August, when we were able to bring 27 teacher leaders from across the district, pre-K through 12, together to do some work around looking at bias in the curriculum and transforming curriculum to make sure that we are exposing our students to what the world looks like outside of Dover-Sherborn and the perspectives that exist in it. So it's been really a train-the-trainer model, and from there the snowball just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger and gaining momentum. Which is just, I think, great that we're all moving in the same direction. We welcome the faculty back at the end of August. All of us came to the Commons for our convocation. We started off with a game. We had 250 educators break into 50 groups of 5, which Dr. Keogh was a little skeptical of, but we pulled it off. So teachers get it, and they were able to, just as they would work their classrooms, work the room, getting together. And so the whole idea there was that each team was given an envelope full of letters, and they were asked to make as many words as they could within 15 minutes. And so some groups had RST, LNE, all the best letters in the alphabet, like you see on Jeopardy, and were able to make 110, 120, 130 words, and then the clock was done, and they could have kept going and going and going, whereas others made 8 words, 10 words, and then started to look around the room and realize, why can't we make any more words? And everybody else keep, continuing to go. So it was the whole idea of the letters that you're given in life, and power and privilege, and what could we have done differently? Did those people with the good letters realize that others didn't have the letters? Did they share? What happened to the people who didn't have some? They became disengaged. So how do we apply that to our world here in Dover-Sherborn and our role as educators and preparing our kids to be able to take some of the power and privilege that we have in this community out to make a difference in the world and kind of change the rules and the dictionary that's out there. And then we came into the auditorium. We talked again about transforming the curriculum, which we've done a lot of work around heroes and holidays, but now we're really making sure that we're taking different voices and intertwining them into the units, and thinking about how teachers use their 1,000 hours that they have with these kiddos every year. So we are off and running. Today, Dr. Keogh said, okay, let's sit down and start to think about what we're doing in November. And I'm like, we just got through August. But we're already planning for our November PD Day. We have lots of ideas. So we'll be meeting with the leadership team and the professional development committee in the next couple of weeks to hash those out. And we will be sure to keep you posted. So thank you.
I have a question. You just in your written report, you talked about the mentoring program.
Mm-hmm.
Does every person who is new to the district have a mentor?
If they are in the role of an educator or something similar, yes. And in fact, we are actually offering our new administrators to the district mentors as well, because it's good practice. So yes. Yeah.
I had a question too. Just in your curricular and instructional goals section, you talk about participating in trainings on safety and mental health and helping, improve students' social emotional wellness, and just in kind of the thinking of, if you see something, say something. I know we're all wanting to keep our schools safe. And I'm just wondering if there's any plan for, letting parents know how they should or could communicate with schools if there is a student they're concerned about in their child's class or that they've come in contact with, and if that's something that we want to bring the community into in a not formal way, but just to open that channel, or how we are going to kind of support that as we go forward.
That's an excellent point. Do you want to speak to that? Or?
Sure. Well, so it's always hard to kind of solicit that information, but we find, generally speaking, people are not afraid to tell us if they're worried about someone. So typically we do get that feedback, and so kids do end up on our radar, but we are planning to have some conversation tomorrow, actually with the leadership, or Wednesday with the leadership team about kids transitioning, in particular, kids who've had perhaps some challenges that put them higher on the radar than other kids, or more clearly on the radar than other students, and we want to make sure that we're sharing that information along the way. We haven't had any conversations. We've had some conversations, but none too seriously about the idea of I've seen some schools will have like a tip line. My problem with it basically is that I feel like we already have enough trouble separating our kids from each other. They sort of do it themselves. I've said before, there's almost like sometimes it feels like in schools in general, but here too, like a sorting hat. And the kids get sorted into these groups. And I don't want to exacerbate that by saying, just let us know who all the kids who are problem children are, because that worries me. But at the same time, I certainly would encourage any parents, and I would encourage you to tell parents that if they do have concerns, to let us know, because if by chance we didn't know there was something going on, we would certainly look into it and make sure that those children get the support that they need. So far, it's worked pretty well, but we can always think about that further.
If I may just add, and I'm speaking from a Pine Hill perspective. Obviously, your question is, broader than through fifth grade. We have a student support team. We meet weekly, nurse, guidance, psych, administration, kids that need to be on all our radar for whatever reason. If a parent were to pick up the phone to Dr. Freeman or myself or the nurse or in any folks, I would just want parents to be clear. Our role would be to listen. Certainly for confidentiality purposes, we couldn't indulge conversation about a family's struggle or a student's struggle. But the perspective as a neighbor, as a coach that one may have, observing play dates, et cetera, at a school, certainly there may be information if you're worried, then there may be information obviously that we should receive. But I just wanted to put that out there. We certainly wouldn't. Our role would be to listen.
It's a really important question though that we're kind of grappling with. And that is what we were talking about it today. The hashtag WeAreDS, we really want to emphasize this idea that we're one community and that we are looking out for each other, we care about each other. And so the kids have gotten that message probably the most. The faculty's getting that message a lot. But how do we make that happen with parents too? Because they're such a huge part of the equation. And so I guess the connection is, I'm thinking like, how do we communicate these messages to parents? Whether it's that one, which is you can let us know if you have concerns about someone in any way. If you think it's a kid who's being victimized, or if you think it's a kid who's particularly aggressive, who knows what the concern is. They should know that that's okay to let us know that. Can we need permission sometimes? So but at the same time, you know, they have to also feel empowered to kind of embrace this hashtag #NewIdeas and continue to push these conversations with their kids. So we're open to suggestions. It is a big part of our strategic plan to improve those conversations. So.
Well, and we have an evening with the superintendent and assistant superintendent coming up, I believe, in November. That's going to be open to parents, and a lot of it's going to be focused on the strategic plan, which, you know, underneath that are all of these really juicy topics. And I'm wondering if we should make that part of our agenda.
That's a really good point. So I'm also having a coffee coming up at Pine Hill next week. So people can come to these things and get information and ask those questions. That's a really that just kind of highlights this idea that we need to continue to work with parents and to expose them to the same things our kids and teachers are exposed to.
Thank you for bringing that up, Tim.
Do you have any other questions or thoughts?
Yes. So I don't want to take away Don's thunder, because, but you can't help but notice some nice changes in this space itself.
Including the beautiful chairs we're all sitting on. Oh my, they match.
They're not rusted.
So I actually will let Don speak to that report, but there was a lot of kind of capital work that went on this summer, and I too want to be sure to thank our custodial crews, and all the people who make it happen. It was a good summer, and we're really proud of this building. This building's in great shape. I hope the people in Sherborn feel that way too. It was in good shape when I was a kid, and it still is. So, of course, the lights die right now.
But that's an energy efficient. It
Oh,
saves us a third on our energy bill.
Reminds you to get up and move once in a while.
That's right.
Just so the camera doesn't dim.
That's for sure. I'll try to be more demonstrative. So I just wanted to kind of double down on what Beth said about the morning, the return of the teachers. It really was a nice opportunity. The teachers come back really refreshed and focused. And I think I said this to the regional school committee, but I remember when I was coaching 6-year-old kids right here from Pine Hill and probably from Chickering, or maybe it was just Sherborn kids at that time, but I couldn't control these kids. It was really tough to kind of get a message across to them, but there was every once in a while a teachable moment. And that minute before the game starts and everybody comes in because they want to be like the big kids and we all come in and put their hands on and say, you know, go team. That's when you actually have, they're all really, really focused and they're listening. And it's the same way with the teachers. They come back, they're focused, they're not distracted. This is a great opportunity for us to talk about the power and impact that they have on kids. And so Beth ran the event at the beginning of the day, which was perfect. She, I believe, did all the way. Actually, I did have my doubts. She's right with that. Because that's a big crowd to manage, but she handled it perfectly. I had the opportunity to speak to the teachers and do an exercise I used to do with new teachers, which is I would ask them to think about a teacher who had impacted their life in a really positive way and to share that with a neighbor. And then I would ask them to talk about a teacher from their past who had hurt them, perhaps, not physically, but said something that embarrassed them or just some kind of situation that didn't necessarily go well. And it's amazing how many teachers, we did not call them out in that setting, but when you do that with a small group of people, it's amazing the emotions that people express. You don't forget those comments. You never forget them. And so we went through that exercise, and I think the teachers really got it. We also did something different this year by having a slideshow. I asked the teachers to send in pictures from their adventures and from their families, and they did. It was awesome. I really loved that. So we'll make that more of a standing tradition. We also did something different this year in recognizing our PTS teachers. And those are our teachers who now have professional teaching status. It actually starts the day of your fourth year, the opening day of the fourth year. We just took a second to recognize these people. It's hard to become a teacher. It's hard enough. It's very demanding to become a teacher. To achieve professional teaching status in a system like this is impressive. And it's important to recognize those schools. We had a very challenging opening. The kids were great, the teachers were excited, everyone was happy to be back, but the heat was oppressive. And it was unusually hot. I am of the kind of old school mentality where we just make it work. It's okay. It's a little heat's not going to hurt you. But this was really, really tough. This was the toughest I have seen. And to that end, some of our parents were certainly letting me know that they think we should be doing something about air conditioning, frankly. We did, in fact, put some freestanding units in the preschool. We have some pretty vulnerable kids, our youngest children, and we could not put window units in those spaces because it would block egress behind the building. So we actually ducted these units out, and it was sufficient, I would say, but it wasn't super strong. It took the edge off. But then there was the rest of the school. And we made sure to come down here quite a bit so that we could experience what the teachers were experiencing and the children. I do not have the statistics on how many kids went to the nurse's office with related issues, but I know for sure there were some.
There were twice as many visits than during the first 7 days of school than there were last year for the first 7 days of school with regard to sick symptoms. The nurse categorizes visits in a few different ways, and one of the categories is injury. I bumped myself on the playground kind of reports. Injury aside, kids that went with feeling unwell symptoms, not injury, were double what they were last year, the first 7 days of school.
So I'm essentially asking you as the school committee how aggressively you want us to pursue this issue.
We had one student pass out twice.
Oh my gosh.
I do feel a certain obligation to at least investigate how much it would cost to retrofit the building. Are there other alternatives? I think we should look at all the possibilities. It does bother me. I have to admit, it does bother me that every other school in the system has air conditioning. There's something about that just, if we're talking about equity, issues of equity, this has to be part of the conversation. So, but we obviously have very limited resources in a small town like this. We know that, but we also, have to do what's in the best interest of the kids and certainly ensure that they're in the best learning environment possible. That is something we've committed to in our strategic plan. So I wanted to put it forth to you to let you know that we're looking at those possibilities, unless you say you don't want us to even look at it.
Is this something you need us to vote on,
No,
or is it just?
No, I'm just getting a sense.
Well, so I had one of those who got sick during all school meeting. My son, he got so hot he wasn't feeling well anyway, and I think it just exacerbated it. I think the issue is becoming, the earth is getting hotter. It's not like it's, getting cooler. It's becoming warmer. And I do think it is terribly hard for them to learn with such stifling heat. And I think the teachers did a great job, and the administration, I know that some parent brought some popsicles. I mean, there were things that we all tried to do to help, but my son ended up missing 3 days because I ended up having to take him to the doctor too, and she's like, if there's no air conditioning, I wouldn't send him back because he would become stuffy. So I just feel like a lot of kids who missed some schooling because of the heat.
And I wonder how much learning can go on in that environment. I can't help but think if it were January and we found out that the heat wasn't working for some reason, we would probably cancel school. I mean, maybe that's extreme, but that the discomfort of those learning environments, I think, are probably similar. So personally, I would like to look into it.
I think it's worth looking into. If we're going to be committed to starting school in August going forward, then I think it makes sense. In the meantime, I think we need to have a process in place for deciding if we don't have school, like what the temperature would have to reach or what the conditions would have to be like.
Or if we have a half day,
Yeah,
we
right.
have more when it's a little cooler.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I also think it's hard on the faculty too. I mean, one child I heard said, well, in my class today, it was the first or second day of school. She said, my teacher said it was just too hot and her brain wasn't working. And they watched some kind of video or something, and I totally felt for the teacher. I mean, it was super hot. But that's right at the beginning of the school year too. That's when they're starting the year, which is challenging. I also wonder, I know we had a surplus that we returned to the town last year, and I don't know if there's any way we could roll that, or if that's, I know it wasn't a lot of money, but if we're going to try to look into this and look for places we can find money, and we have had surpluses, and I don't know if there's any way for us to recoup that.
I do think that there are a number of possible ways to go about this. It doesn't necessarily have to be, the whole building one summer. Some places will roll out a section at a time because it's all they can afford. We did 2 rooms in preschool this summer.
Well, plus the kindergarten was already.
Yes, the kindergarten was already
had
air
the
conditioned.
Right.
But if we're serious about the impact that these temperatures have on the kids, I think it is worth looking into. I will say, in response to your question, Jennifer, about the process in place, the superintendents, it's a tight circle. We are in touch with each other all the time, and that's because if 5 of us cancel, puts the other group in that vicinity in a difficult spot. And so that's always a tough call. Whether it's a snow day or whether we're going to dismiss early, it's a tough call. But I did hear one superintendent say as we were processing this last week that he was concerned that if he did it, then he felt like, well, where's the cutoff? It's going to be like every time we're in that range that people are uncomfortable, or if somebody was, 10 people went to the nurse. It's just tough situation to be in. I will say, I know there's one person at the table, 2 actually, that went from a building that was incredibly hot. It was really only one of us because I had AC in my office. But the old Wellesley High School was built in 1938, and it was 4 stories essentially. If you included the basement, it was unbearable. And how many years were you in there, Amanda? 2, maybe 3? Or more?
More than that.
More.
Yeah.
And the transition to the new building at AC was just huge.
Yeah, I mean, it gives you your energy back. I mean, you all know how it is on those hot days. And as a teacher, when you're trying to sustain the energy for everyone in front of you, it's hard.
I know we have certain temperatures where the kids can't go outside. I mean, if you could have an interior building temperature that would be like cutoff point or something. I don't know.
Well,
The killer this August into September too, the temperature plus the humidity.
Right.
The humidity was unbearable.
actually, this space we noticed with the new fans was
Yeah.
pretty comfortable
There,
because of the humidity.
the
problem.
difference between the cafeteria and the auditorium was so palpable with, I think, the higher ceilings and the fans. And you were in some of our D-wing classrooms. Our first grade classrooms hit the highest temperatures, the one facing the playground. But our D-wing classrooms, particularly those that look behind the school as opposed to out front, the air doesn't circulate. So they all have different, but we had classrooms that were 89 and 91 degrees.
So it's something that we would like to continue to investigate.
So when your building subcommittee comes together, we can talk about that a little bit more and some steps that we can take. Obviously, we've just went through the whole process at Chickering, so we sort of know what steps need to be taken and how you can go about it. We've had some of our contractors come in already to give us some cost estimates so we know like what ballpark we're in. So we're waiting for those numbers to come in because it does help. I mean, it's not an engineering study, but it's someone who does this and has some ideas, and at least we know what are we talking, so we can gather some information like that. I mean, it is it's not a quick process because you want to do it right, and usually doing the engineering design study is something that you want to do before making that investment, but it also depends on how intertwined we make it in the building, or are there easier ways that we can sort of make it comfortable on those 10 to 15 days that we have to worry about.
And some sections of the building are better equipped than others.
Right.
So the library wing and the cafeteria, I believe, were added on at the same time. And you can see those big ducts. So they have the duct work in place. That might, reduce cost.
Right.
Whereas some of
Almost
these
do a
older
retrofit
wings are
on
not
this.
equipped like that. So it all has to be kind of taken into account. I think it's something that we should at least investigate.
Yes.
We owe that to people.
And to your point, the school is in such great shape that we'll be here for a while. So it's not like in 5 years we're going to be looking at building new schools.
Okay, so we'll do that. I think most of the rest of the superintendent's report speaks for itself. The special ed review is underway. You know that we're having a meeting on the 23rd of October. That will be a joint meeting. We'll hear from Dorsey just about our administrative structure, essentially, and what she has seen based on her interviews and best practice. And she's really looking closely at numbers, and she'll give us some of her findings and perhaps one or two recommendations. So I think that would be a good conversation. You know that we will have our special ed interim candidate this evening later on to get through this. And Beth mentioned the administrative retreat. It was fantastic. I do want to just, as much as I look at rankings of most administrators skeptically, because there are a lot of arguments as to why some school systems or communities perform better than others, but you can't help acknowledge the fact that Dover Sherborn was the #1 school, high schools in the West of Boston this year. So I want to congratulate our staff and families for their efforts to make us such a high achieving system. I also want to commend our parents and our students for their efforts to be good people. So I place a high priority on that. I wouldn't mind seeing a ranking for that. Kudos to everyone for that. And that's, I also, you see attached two things actually, or three things. The list of teachers who have been our longest serving. Sarah Richards at 31 years, pretty impressive. Bridie Hilperts and Karen Gallant at 20, and Peter Gimlet at 15. So I want to congratulate them. you can see that Chris Randa, Amy Curry, and Tanya Bridge achieved professional teaching status. And you heard mention of Allison and Lee Jeffries being hired this year, and the educational assistants, which Barbara mentioned in her report as well. Finally, if I may, for just a minute, I wanted to share with you the enrollment figures for this year. If you think back to where we were last year when we were just kicking off the year, this is still very early. The state calls it the October 1st report for a reason. They usually don't check enrollments until all of the dust has settled. People are still moving at the beginning of the year, in and out. We had somebody move into the system in middle or high school today. I saw a new student. So people are still coming in and out. Usually by October 1st, those things have pretty much settled down. And so these are really preliminary, but you can see on October 1st last year where our numbers were and where they are now. So we were at 397 students last year, and currently we are at 382. So that's excluding the preschool numbers up at the top. So that puts us down 15 students from where we were a year ago. These numbers were true to October 1st. So I know I've heard some concerns on occasion about what are we going to do about the developments in town, but this puts us considerably below our high, probably 100 plus more students in this building, maybe 10 years ago. We have that full report, and it usually comes in maybe in October.
Budget book.
Yeah.
Budget book, right. So, but I can tell you, having looked at it, we had far more students in this building in the past. So, what schools do in the event of an influx is they carve out spaces. They make spaces where there weren't necessarily spaces, such as was done here in your cafeteria. That sometimes happens in the library. I remember when I was a principal in Wellesley, before that building came online, Amanda, you may remember, they added maybe 10 classrooms, taking out other spaces and reconfiguring them. So I think we're in fine shape right now, I really do. And we'll just have to keep monitoring. I don't know if you have any questions. You can see on the right-hand column, those are the one-year projections. So that's what we were projecting. So we came in pretty darn close. 55 to 53, 5350. I guess we were a little off in fourth grade, where we were projecting 71 and they came in at 65.
And remember, that's where we reduced, and we were concerned we might have class sizes of 24. So that actually fell much in our favor.
Yes. So that really. So there you have it. It's just a preliminary look at the
Thank you. Does anyone have questions about that? Okay, thank you, Theo. And that brings us to FY18 budget.
Great. So before we can really usher in the new year, we have to close out the old year. So this will be your final report on numbers for fiscal year 18, but luckily we're in a much better position than we were last year at this time. If you remember last year, just to refresh and for the new members' purposes, we had to actually file for a supplemental budget appropriation last year because we were over a lot in our out of district. So we had requested an additional $70,000 to our budget last year. Fortunately, this year we're in the reverse situation where we are returning funds to the town. So that's great news. Just a quick recap. Nothing really changed from when we last met in June. You had a positive salary variance composed primarily of post-budget staffing changes in fiscal year 18, and then you had multiple maternity leaves that, although it looks like your substitute line item is way over budget, you had the salary savings of the tenured teachers, so that was a positive impact from salaries. But basically, our salaries were within 1% of budget, which I think is pretty good. On the operating expenditures, again, we have a positive operating variance. We had the areas where we saw the savings was in SPED contracted services, and that was just a change in the needs of some of our students in the IEP realm. We always have a little bit of savings in utilities because we never want to cut ourselves too close on the utilities. And we didn't really have any major building repairs this year. If you remember last year, we had issues with the bladders of our boilers and things like that. So we were fortunate not to have any of that this year, which allowed us to take care of some maintenance projects that were on your list, including the refinishing of this auditorium floor, tiling of the library entryway, and one of the staff restrooms that had some water damage to the floor. We put new fencing around the dumpsters. We purchased a storage shed for the playground. And on the equipment side, I didn't note here, we did buy the aerial lift. So we had a very productive maintenance year in that we were able to take care of some things that were on our to-do list. So that was very good. On the out-of-district expenditures, again, it's just really hard to know exactly how to budget out-of-district. We have gotten it, we budget for what we know at the time, so anything that comes in after, obviously we have little safety nets to protect us. So we did go over budget in our out-of-district by about $66,000. $50,000 of it was tuitions and about $15,000 in transportation cost. If you remember, the fiscal year 18 budget was built with 18 placements. We ended the year with 19. But if you also, during the year, I told you a lot of ins and outs. So that 66,000 doesn't seem like a lot, but if we talk about all the activity, there was a lot of activity in that realm. We'll have a status report for you in October of where we stand in October as of where we did the budget for fiscal year 19. And again, I think you're going to see there's been a lot of changes because that's just a very volatile population. But as we are able to add it all together, we will be returning $47,000 to the town. We also are leaving ourselves with a reserve in our circuit breaker. You remember that we used $65,000 to balance the budget. This $60,000 is in addition to that $65,000. So we have a place to go before we'd have to go to your circuit breaker stabilization fund if we run into any issues this year where something comes up unexpected. So that is a nice sort of second layer of protection that we have versus having to go as the town for supplemental.
Can I ask you a question? So the 60,000 in circuit breaker fund is separate from the circuit breaker stabilization fund?
Yes. Yes. So the circuit breaker fund is where your monies go in and out. Right. It's different from the stabilization funds.
Okay.
Yeah. Part of it is that we brought down a little bit. You used to build your budget using 60% circuit breaker. I think it ended up being more, this year's budget's more like 50%. So that little bit of cushion right there allows you to not be right at the tip if something happens that we don't know about. Also, if you remember, our reimbursement was, we thought was 65, went up to almost 73 at the end. So we had that other little bit of catch up that definitely helped us.
And that's something, though, that we don't know until...
You really don't know, so you have to be conservative when you, right.
Wasn't it lower than, what was it the year before that?
It was 72 the year before. So to go to 65 initially last year was a little bit of a, like, what's going on? But as it ended up being at like 73. Yeah. Also this month you have your status report, sort of the roll forward of your special revenue and revolving funds. We present this report quarterly to you. This is all your, mainly the pre-K, your food service, your building funds. Just a couple things to highlight. You'll see the expenditures in the building rental. I will highlight that was been paid for the flooring that you're sitting on right now. That was how we took care of that. Cafeteria is continuing to build a nice little fund balance, and that will allow us to potentially do some updates or replacements in the kitchen that we can do out of the food service versus having to ask the town for capital money. You'll see your circuit breaker. roll forward. The balance at 6:30 of 55,000 is taking into consideration that we prepaid 70,000 in June. So that was the 65,000 that we said we were going to put towards the budget. Plus I had to do an extra 5. You are limited to what you can carry forward in your circuit breaker. So we wanted to make sure we weren't up against that. So I prepaid a little bit more. So we'd be right at, you can keep 1 year's worth of circuit breaker. Gift fund, really the activity you see there is the Mudge gift that we expended earlier last summer for the sound system in here. And then you've got your non-resident tuition, Pine Hill Preschool, and then your sovereign gift fund. And at the bottom you have your student activity funds. So your next report will be September 30th for these revolving funds. Any questions on fiscal year 18? So just a brief status on 19. We'll have your first status of appropriations as of September 30th at the October meeting. At this point, we're not seeing any significant variances in any of our budget line items. There's still a few staffing assignments being finalized, so we'll be bringing the statement to you as of September 30th. Hopefully everything is where it's going to be, and we'll sort of be able to give you our projections. Now on to the fun part, is the capital. So we're pleased to say that all 3 of your capital projects that we got approved for fiscal year 19 are complete. That is a really good feeling. And they're complete with about $22,103 to spare that will also be returned back to the town, because those accounts will be closed because all the projects are completed. The walk-in fridge was just completed on Monday, and I hear that you have to wear sunglasses to go into it because the floor is so shiny and bright. The diamond plate.
If you can picture the 3 ladies who work in our kitchen, Miss JoJo, our food director, Barb, you gotta come see. More excited than new science curriculum for this refrigerator.
Yeah, it was pretty exciting, and I think we'll have time after this meeting before the joint meetings just to take a quick swing around so you can see the floors. You can see the circulation desk that was received in the library just last week. That was part of the gift fund and operating fund purchase last year. And hopefully you saw on your way in all the new concrete work. I think it looks fabulous. They did a really nice job, and it really just brings everything up to look fresh and new outside. And as Barb mentioned in her report, the big window project that this committee had worked on even before my time here finally was completed over April break, and the new windows do look just fabulous. So I think you've accomplished a lot over the last 3 years, so the school looks really, really good. Just to throw in the phone system, Barb mentioned, but remember we were able to use E-rate funds, so we didn't have to ask the town for that money. And again, the auditorium floor we did with your building rental. So those were sort of 2 capital-related projects that we were able to go to other sources of funding other than asking the town for capital. We will begin the fiscal year 20 through 24 capital planning process in the coming weeks. I'll ask that subcommittee to come in, and we will start looking at where we are now and updating the plan, because we use our on-site insight plan, but we also look around and say, what else do we need to do? For example, obviously air conditioning was not in the on-site insight report. So it's those kind of things that come about after that aren't sort of a known thing that we can talk about, and we will get a draft ready to bring back to the committee before it starts going through the capital process of the town. Any other questions? And I will have to say, you guys are very lucky. Peter Gemblin is just a fabulous asset at this school. It was a lot of moving around. If you could see this room and imagine this room was full of stuff because we had to empty the hallways. When we go through the classrooms too, or when you peek in, you'll notice that we took all the old TVs down that haven't been used in multiple years. They were all in here. So between trying to get ready for the huge flooring project and getting the rooms ready for the teachers.
Relocating the faculty rooms.
Exactly,
Right,
the switch.
And
Couple teacher
hosting camp
rooms.
convention.
Yes.
And then the principal throws camp invention in the mix.
I have a picture if
He
you
was
wanna
very
see what
accommodating.
Yeah. So and then they had to work some weekends to get the flooring project done on time. So I commend his dedication to the facility, and we're very fortunate to have, because he definitely puts his thumbprint on this building.
And thank you, John, for approving a little bit of overtime so he could do some painting in some of our common rooms where
Right.
we're getting a bit dated.
Yes, you'll notice that the whole cafeteria was painted, so hopefully you didn't have any, and this room, and that's all done by Peter.
Wow.
So,
The McCoy baffles.
yes.
Yeah.
She was going to paint them herself.
That's what
It was my threat.
that's great. Yeah, Thank you, Don.
You're welcome.
Anybody have any questions about that? All right. So that brings us to approval of the minutes from June 14th. Get a chance to look those over. So I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from June 14th, 2018. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Great, that's approved. And then there is information at the back of the packet just for your information, communications. Which brings us to items for our next.
Yes. So, do you have any that that are kind of on your mind or want to report on?
Well, we discussed the air conditioning budget and certainly.
We can let you know what we like.
Anybody have anything? You can always email me.
Great, because we haven't set that agenda. So.
Yeah. Just more to let you know that.
One thing you'll need to do, that's your opportunity to give us any input on the budget, because when you meet in November, you'll have a budget. So it's, I think we put in all the agendas last year, just budget discussion. So it's like big picture, just things that you want to worry, that you're concerned about or wanting to make sure we address. It's your opportunity to have some preliminary input into the budget building process.
We set the priorities in October.
Well, we open it up if they have any concerns of things that they want to make sure we look at with the budget.
Okay, things like that. So just feel free to email me with your thoughts. All right. So I believe that brings us to a close. So I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Now we're going to have an executive session
Oh, yeah, we can do executive session.
Oh, okay, so
to pull to go into executive session.
to pull to go into executive session, not to return to open session.
Second.
Yes.
It's
Oh.
Amanda Brown, yeah.
Jennifer.
It's okay. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Dana's away and Claire's sick.
I only see my parents, and they're lovely.
All right.
Does
the region You guys have a quorum?
Yeah, we do. Yes, entertain.
Good evening. I'd like to call the Joint School Committee meeting to order September 17th, 8:03 p.m. First thing I just want to do is, I think we already know, but we confirm we have a quorum. I know Dover has a quorum. Region?
Yep.
Sherborn? Wonderful. So the purpose of this meeting is to appoint the interim special education director, and I would like to offer Dr. Keogh some comments and maybe even an appointment or a recommendation.
Perfect, excellent. So tonight, I'm thrilled to introduce to all of you, and hopefully most of you have met her by now, but this is Debbie Dixon. And we're thrilled to have her here this evening. Debbie has a background in special education, a master's from Boston College, and did her undergraduate work in elementary ed at Bridgewater. She has most recently been in Franklin, serving as the Director of Student Services, and that is since 2015 until the present. She, prior to that, was in Sudbury as the Director of Student Services from March 2001 to June 2015. She was also a Director of Pupil Personnel from 1988 to 2001 in Swampscott. So that's a lot of experience, and I believe, and the search committee believed this will serve her very well. We had some wonderful feedback. Debbie was met with the school committee, met with parents and CPAC and the stakeholders from the schools, the administration and the team chairs, and as well as with me. And the feedback was really amazing. It was, first of all, there was a lot of it, and it was consistently positive. So I just want to read a few of the things that came forward in that process. I think Ms. Dixon's persona would be a good fit. Her experience and passion would enable her to quickly earn the respect of those she works with, and thus would allow her to start working on the post-special ed evaluation game plan quickly. I feel Ms. Dixon would help the department recalibrate, reinvigorate, and move forward. She believes that kids are capable of understanding their needs, bringing their voice into the discussion, understand their needs, help them understand how to use the services offered them, and give them an opportunity to learn to advocate for themselves. On cultural competencies, you know that we've been working hard on cultural responsiveness. She said that I've always been passionate about marginalized groups, of which special education students are just one. She's very poised and articulate. Her background will carry sufficient gravitas with DS parents, quiet leadership, genuine and real. So I am pleased and thrilled to have this opportunity to recommend to you Debbie Dixon.
Great. For some of you that were available to meet Debbie, does anyone have any additional comments they'd like to make? There's an opportunity for anyone else to cheer on anything that's other than what what Andrew had to say.
Okay. I enjoyed meeting with Debbie twice in two groups, and I think for me the fit that you bring perhaps the strongest is around the kind of social, emotional, and cultural. I really get a sense that you love the kids. I mean, and that's why you're in the position, and that's why you want to come here. I think it'll work very well, complement the senior administrators as well as the building leaders.
Thank you, Michael. Well, I think we should make an opportunity to move Andrew's appointment forward. I think we should start with Dover. Do we have a motion to appoint Debbie Dixon as interim special ed director?
So moved.
Second. Okay. Kate? Sherborn?
Sure. Make a motion to appoint Debbie Dixon as the Director of Special Ed for 2018-19 school year.
So moved.
Second?
Regent? So I'll make the motion.
Second.
I'll second.
Okay.
Dover, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I think we got this one.
Everybody raised their
Sherborn, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Great.
Regent, discussion?
Okay, seeing all in favor, vote? Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Great.
Sorry.
I believe we are all set. Thank you, Debbie.
Thank you.
Before we, you might want to make a few comments, but before you do, not give you a moment to think about it. I do want to thank this search committee made up of our administrators, our parents, community members. So I think that's very awesome that everyone got involved. It takes time, but we were thoughtful and efficient. So thank you very much to all of you all. I want to thank the candidates that were interested in this wonderful district, the finalists, and obviously Debbie. So really want to thank everybody for spending the time to put forth some effort and coming forward with a wonderful candidate. And I'm looking forward to a great year. You have a great school system to work with, a lot we want to do, and I look forward to seeing what happens in the next year or so.
Well, thank you all. I am honored to have been selected, and I'm so excited to join the team. I think half of the draw was the search committees. I felt comfortable. I think folks asked great questions that lend themselves to what you're all about, from cultural efficiency to college and AP classes for students. I do love kids. I want all children to have equal access and achieve at the highest level. I understand that your staffs are fabulous. Words on the streets, they're great. And I look forward to working with them and leading during the short period of time from now to the end of the school year. We'll look forward to reading the audit that is being conducted and taking any action that I can during this time.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Before we adjourn, I think we should confirm when our next joint school committee meeting is.
Yes.
Why we're here.
Next meeting. Somebody confused things. I apologize for that. I mistakenly was thinking that we were going forward with our October 9th meeting and the additional 23rd meeting. And really, it makes more sense to just simply have it on the 23rd. At that meeting, we will cover, and there could be more, because I haven't met with the three chairs, so there may be something else added to the agenda. I kind of hope not, because it's a lot. We'll be covering the action plan for the strategic plan, that component. So we'll look at all of the action steps associated with the with each strategic priority, and then we will hear from Dorsey Yearly her recommendations or findings as they pertain to our leadership structure within special ed. And the second component of that will take place in the January meeting. So October 23rd is our next joint meeting.
7 p.m.?
7 p.m.
At Chickering?
At Chickering.
Okay, and there is no meeting October 9th?
There is no meeting October 9th.
Just want to make sure we all know.
There's a regional meeting.
There's no joint meeting.
There's a regional school committee
There is no.
We unfortunately are booked for that night.
Okay.
All the individual meetings are as planned.
Great.
Except for Dover's being set to a 5:30.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Andrew?
Yes.
On this schedule that we have here, it says that the joint meeting, oh, this is the regional? No, this is the joint you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Is on the 23rd at 6:30 at the middle school.
Right. So that's a mistake.
Okay.
Cheryl put the.
I don't think we were sure we were going to do it.
It's definitely the 23rd. I think when she was doing this, I was probably still working on the details with Henry, because it made sense to have it back to back with Henry's meeting.
Yeah.
But the question was whether Henry could move his to an earlier start. He was able to get the Dover committee, thank you very much, to start earlier at 5:30, which means they'd be done hopefully at 7, which means we could have the joint meeting at 7. So at 7 o'clock on the 23rd. At Chickering.
Yeah.
Did you want to mention the other?
No, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have a conversation with Henry about that.
Thank you.
Great. Any other items? Hearing none. Meeting adjourned. 8:12.
Thank you.
Record time.